Welcome to Hope Stories. Imagine living in a mansion that sparkles like a dream, yet behind its glass walls, two young sisters scrub floors with bruised hands and silent hearts. A father too busy to see, a stepmother with secrets as sharp as broken glass, and a past that refuses to stay buried. This is not the fairy tale you expect. What would you do if the people meant to love you most were also the ones who hurt you the deepest? Tonight, we'll dive into a story of betrayal, buried truths, and the unthinkable choices that can either shatter a family forever or set them free. Stay with us as we unravel the darkness and discover where hope can still be found, even in the most broken places. The Pacific breeze carried the scent of salt and jasmine through the open windows of the glass-walled mansion in the Hollywood Hills, but inside, the air felt suffocating. Emily pressed her palm against the cool marble counter, her fingers aching from scrubbing floors that never stayed clean enough. At 22, she should have been worrying about finals or interviews, not whether her stepmother would approve the polish on the silverware. Chloe, only 19, moved silently behind her, arms trembling under the weight of linens too fine for them to ever touch as guests. Their father, Richard, a titan of West Coast real estate, believed his daughters were living in a gilded sanctuary. The truth was uglier. For 3 years, the house had been their prison, and Victoria held the keys. Victoria's arrival had been like a champagne toast, sparkling, intoxicating, and dangerously deceptive. With her sculpted cheekbones, icy pearls, and a smile that belonged on the cover of Vanity Fair, she captivated Richard after his first wife's death. But behind closed doors, the elegance dissolved. The girls were turned into servants under the guise of building character. Their allowances vanished. Designer gowns for galas replaced textbooks and clothes that fit. Friends stopped calling. Birthdays came and went without notice. Victoria didn't shout often. She didn't have to. Her power was in the chilling glance that made you feel microscopic. There had been whispers among the staff. Mrs. Patterson, the housekeeper, left cryptic notes of comfort tucked under Emily's pillow. Georges, the gardener, sometimes lingered near the windows as the girls worked late into the night, his face tight with helplessness. No one dared confront Victoria. Richard traveled too often, and when he returned, the house gleamed. The girls rehearsed their lines. "We're fine, Dad. School's great. We miss you." Lies told out of fear, and perhaps a sliver of shame that they'd been conquered so completely. On a late autumn night, the hills shrouded in mist, something cracked. A crystal decanter slipped from Chloe's exhausted fingers and shattered across the hardwood floor. Victoria's fury was instant. The slap echoed through the vaulted living room. Emily stepped between them, heart pounding, eyes burning, but she too absorbed a blow that left her cheek flaming red. "Useless," Victoria hissed, her voice low and venomous. "You'd be nothing without this house, and don't you forget who allows you to breathe here." What none of them realized was that Richard had come home early. He stood in the shadow of the doorway, the shock on his face hardening into something sharper. He'd ignored small doubts for years, the hollow look in his daughter's eyes, the way they flinched when he touched their shoulders. Tonight stripped the blinders from his soul. The man who'd brokered billion-dollar deals suddenly saw the greatest failure of his life, and it lived under his roof. He didn't explode immediately. Richard was a strategist. He'd built his empire by studying his opponents. That night, as Victoria slept under Egyptian cotton sheets, he called Mrs. Patterson and Jorge into his office. Files emerged. Photos of bruised hands, testimonies whispered into voice memos, bank statements showing money siphoned from household budgets into Victoria's private accounts for jewelry and couture. The case built itself like a storm on the horizon. By dawn, Richard was ready. The confrontation came the following evening, beneath the glow of the Swarovski chandelier. Victoria swept into the great room in an emerald gown, expecting cocktails. Instead, she found Richard waiting with Emily and Chloe by his side. On the table lay the evidence, a silent jury. Richard's voice was calm, but each word landed like a gavel. He detailed the abuse, the theft, the manipulation. For every denial Victoria uttered, there was a document to crush it. Her practiced poise faltered. A tremor betrayed her. The twist came when Richard outlined her options with a precision that chilled even Emily. A generous settlement and a permanent disappearance from their lives, or a public trial that would expose every sordid detail to the press. The woman who had orchestrated their misery suddenly looked small, cornered by the very man she thought she'd controlled. Her diamonds sparkled mockingly under the chandelier as her world unraveled. Upstairs, Chloe's nails dug into Emily's arm. Part of her longed to see Victoria dragged into court, the world finally seeing the monster she'd hidden behind Vogue-worthy photos. But another part craved silence, an end without more cameras, more pain. Richard, ever the strategist, had chosen the path that would protect them most, even if it denied the satisfaction of spectacle. Victoria's lips parted as if to lash back, but no words came. For the first time, she looked at the daughters she'd tormented and saw something unbreakable in their tear-streaked faces. Her emerald gown rustled as she sank into the leather chair, defeated. Outside, the mist parted. The lights of Los Angeles blinked below like distant stars. Would you have taken the quiet deal, or demanded the world know the truth? Do you believe redemption is possible for someone like Victoria? As the night deepened and a pen slid across the divorce papers, none of them realized another secret was about to surface, one that could shatter even this fragile victory. Victoria's signature hovered above the divorce papers, her manicured hand trembling under the chandelier's glow. Richard's ultimatum still echoed in the room like a loaded gun. Take the settlement and vanish, or face the ruinous blaze of public scandal. Emily stood frozen, her breath shallow, watching the woman who had dictated every moment of her youth lose control for the first time. Chloe clutched her sister's sleeve, silently begging for it to be over. Yet something unexpected happened. Instead of the quick scrawl Richard anticipated, Victoria lowered the pen, her voice breaking the silence with words that twisted the air. You think you know everything, Richard? You think you're the hero swooping in at the 11th hour? You never asked what it cost me to keep your empire untarnished. The venom in her tone had softened into something stranger, grief. Richard's brow furrowed. What are you talking about? Victoria's lips curved into a bitter smile. Did you think those board scandals 5 years ago disappeared on their own? Or that the investors who threatened your reputation just forgot? I buried them, Richard. I did what you didn't have the stomach to do. And yes, I used your daughters to keep you untouchable. The words landed like knives. Emily blinked, unable to process what she was hearing. Victoria leaned forward, eyes glistening with a fury edged in pain. While you closed deals in penthouses, I made sure the whispers about your family stayed whispers. Maybe I am a monster, but I'm your monster, and you let me be. The accusation sliced through Richard's practiced composure. A flush of shame crept up his neck. For the first time, Emily wondered if their father's ignorance had been willful. He'd told himself he didn't know, but had he looked away because it was easier than confronting the cracks in his perfect life? The moral certainty that had fueled Emily's hope wavered. If Victoria's cruelty was partly in service of Richard's ambition, what did that make him? Upstairs, the sound of a door creaked. Mrs. Patterson appeared at the landing, face pale. Sir, she said quietly, maybe she's not lying. I've heard calls late at night. Threats about stories about the girls being used. Her voice trailed off, afraid of saying too much. The room shifted. Chloe stepped forward, voice trembling. You're saying Dad knew? That he traded our lives so no one questioned him? The question burned. Richard turned toward his daughters, panic and guilt flickering behind his eyes. I didn't know the extent, he insisted, but even to himself the words rang hollow. Victoria seized the opening. He let me take the blame, girls. He let you hate me so you'd love him. Ask yourself why he was never home. Ask what he was protecting. The truth or some distorted version of it, Emily couldn't tell. But her heart pounded with betrayal, with the terrifying possibility that love and neglect could coexist in the same man. The room's balance of power tilted. Richard no longer looked like the sole savior. Emily's throat tightened. She had dreamed of rescue, but what if justice meant dismantling the illusion of the father she adored? Her moral compass spun wildly. Would she sign the papers and let Victoria vanish with this secret weapon, or demand the full truth and risk burning what remained of their family? As the silence stretched, Victoria's pen scratched across the paper at last, but not before her final whisper. You've all built your lives on lies. Tear me down if you want. Just know the fire won't stop with me. Do you believe Victoria's confession changes everything? Or is it just another manipulation to save herself? What truths would you be willing to confront if it meant shattering the image of someone you love? And as Emily's world tilts under the weight of betrayal, an even darker revelation waits in the shadows, threatening to unravel the fragile victory they thought they'd won. Stay with us for what comes next. Emily's pulse thudded in her ears as Victoria's words lingered like a poison cloud over the room. The truth, or whatever fragment of truth Victoria claimed, was twisting everything Emily thought she knew. Richard's face, drawn and uncharacteristically unsure, made her stomach knot. She had spent years praying for his return, for him to notice their pain. Now, a sliver of doubt cut through her devotion. Had he chosen success over them? Chloe's voice was barely a whisper, but sharp as glass. Tell us everything, Dad. No more excuses. Her eyes shone with unshed tears, her body trembling like a leaf caught between fear and fury. Richard opened his mouth, shut it, and looked away, as if the view of Los Angeles glittering beyond the windows could shield him. There were threats, he admitted slowly. People wanted to expose the company. They threatened to use you to get to me. I thought, God help me, I thought Victoria could handle it. I didn't know she'd take it this far. His confession hung there, neither an apology nor an absolution. Emily felt the floor tilt beneath her. So it was true. In his absence, he had placed their lives into the hands of a woman he barely knew, hoping his empire would stay intact. She wanted to scream at him, collapse into his arms, and flee from him all at once. The war inside her raged hotter with every second. Victoria leaned back with a hollow laugh. You see, girls? Monsters don't just happen. They're made. Richard built me as surely as he built those towers with his name etched in gold. The bitter triumph in her voice made Emily's chest ache. But before anyone could respond, Mrs. Patterson stepped forward again, clutching something close to her chest, a worn leather folder. There's more, she said softly, her voice cracking. I wasn't going to share this, but you need to know. She placed the folder on the table. Inside were photographs, older than the rest, showing Victoria in meetings with men Emily didn't recognize, documents about hush money wired offshore, and most shocking, a letter in their late mother's handwriting. Emily's breath caught as she read the shaky script. Warnings about people circling the family after her death, pleas for Richard to protect the girls from being used. The date on the letter was months before Victoria ever entered their lives. Emily's throat constricted. Their mother had seen the storm coming, and somehow her words had been ignored or buried. Chloe let out a sob that pierced the room. Richard's face crumpled. I never saw that letter, he said, reaching for it with trembling hands. I swear I didn't. Victoria's eyes flashed, uncharacteristically raw. I found it in his office after we married. I tried to handle things my way. Maybe I failed. Maybe I became the villain you needed me to be. For a fleeting second, Emily saw something almost human in her stepmother. A trace of someone who had once wanted to matter, twisted by power and fear. It didn't erase the years of cruelty, but it complicated the narrative she had clung to. Right and wrong blurred. Love and betrayal danced so closely they were indistinguishable. Emily's chest tightened with a new, deeper dread. If their late mother had foreseen danger and failed to shield them, if their father had turned away, and Victoria had become both jailer and protector in her own warped way, then who could they trust now? And what other ghosts were waiting in the shadows of their family's carefully polished image? Her heart pounded with a terrifying clarity. The war for their future wasn't over. It had just begun. Do you think Emily and Chloe can ever truly forgive their father or stepmother after learning these secrets? What would you do if the people you love most were the ones who betrayed and protected you at the same time? As Emily stared at her mother's letter, she felt the ground shift again. Because outside the mansion's gates, an unfamiliar car idled in the dark, carrying someone who knew even more about the family's buried sins, ready to knock. The sound of tires on gravel drew everyone's attention to the massive windows overlooking the driveway. Emily's heart stuttered as headlights cut through the darkness, an unfamiliar black sedan idling just beyond the gates. For a moment, no one moved. The house felt like a stage, and whatever was coming next was already in motion. Richard frowned, pulling his daughters instinctively closer, but the guilt etched into his face made the gesture feel hollow. Chloe whispered, "Who is that?" As a tall man in a charcoal suit stepped out of the car, his silhouette stark against the glow of the security lights. He carried no briefcase, no clipboard, just a small envelope in his hand. There was something unnerving about his calm, deliberate stride as he approached the front door. Victoria, pale now, seemed to shrink into herself, her poise cracking. "I know him," she muttered, almost to herself. "I told you the fire wouldn't stop with me." Before anyone could press her for an explanation, the doorbell chimed, a soft, polite sound that somehow carried the weight of a warning. Mrs. Patterson hesitated before opening the door. The man's voice was smooth, almost gentle, as he addressed Richard by name. "I believe we need to talk. All of you." He stepped inside without waiting for permission, handing the envelope to Emily, not Richard. "This belongs to you," he said. Her fingers trembled as she opened it, revealing a stack of photographs and documents that made her breath hitch. The images showed her and Chloe from years past, at school, at the park, even inside the mansion when they thought they were alone. Notes scrawled in the margins in a hand she didn't recognize referenced details about their schedules, their vulnerabilities. The documents beneath were worse. Legal papers suggesting guardianship arrangements, contingency plans involving her and Chloe that predated Victoria. Emily's mind spun. "What is this?" she asked, voice shaking. The man's gaze softened in a way that made her skin crawl. "Insurance," he said simply. "Your mother hired us before she died. She feared someone would use you as leverage, and she was right. But there's more, things she uncovered about Richard's partners, things that put all of you at risk even now." Richard's face drained of color. "You have no right." The man cut him off calmly. "No right? Your wife paid us to protect her daughters when she realized you wouldn't. We've been watching because the threats never ended, Mr. Hale. They've only evolved." The revelation sliced through Emily's chest like ice. Her mother hadn't just foreseen danger. She had enlisted strangers to guard them in secret. All these years of feeling invisible, and yet someone had been there in the shadows, watching, waiting. Gratitude and violation clashed violently in her heart. She looked at Richard, searching his face for answers, for remorse, for anything that would make sense of the storm. He couldn't meet her eyes. Chloe gripped her hand tighter, whispering, "Mom knew. She tried to save us. And Dad." Her voice broke. The man placed a card on the table. "The people who threatened you before are circling again. Someone in this family knows more than they've admitted. Decide quickly who you trust, because whoever made those threats back then may already be inside your walls." He turned and left as silently as he'd arrived, the sound of the car fading into the night. Emily stared down at the photographs, her world folding in on itself. Her mother's secret guardians, her father's negligence, Victoria's twisted confession. None of it felt black or white anymore. Everything she thought she knew about safety and love was crumbling. She felt the weight of a choice looming. Expose every truth, no matter how it burned, or bury the past deeper and hope the danger passed. Neither felt survivable. Would you confront every painful secret to finally end the cycle, or protect your heart by keeping some truths buried? And as Emily lifted her mother's letter again, a new shadow crossed the window, a figure watching from the dark, proof that the past was far from finished. Stay with us for what happens when the door finally opens again. Emily could still feel the chill of the man's presence lingering long after the hum of the sedan had faded into the night. The photographs trembled in her hands, their edges cutting against her skin like tiny blades of truth. She wanted answers, but more than that, she wanted clarity. Clarity on who to believe, who to blame, and whether love could survive this labyrinth of secrets. Outside the window, a shadow shifted again. It wasn't the suited man this time. A different figure stepped closer, and the porch light caught the face of a woman Emily hadn't seen in years. Her godmother, Elise, someone her mother had trusted implicitly. Richard's sharp intake of breath confirmed the recognition. Elise crossed the threshold with an urgency that filled the room with a new kind of electricity. "You opened the envelope," she said, glancing at the photos. Her voice carried a strange mixture of sorrow and resolve. "Then you need to know the rest." Her gaze swept across Richard, Victoria, and the girls, landing finally on Emily. Your mother didn't just hire protection. She uncovered something dangerous about Richard's company. She knew her time was running out. The room tilted. Richard's fists clenched. Careful, Elise, he warned, but Elise pressed on, unflinching. She suspected her death wasn't natural, that the stress, the threats, the deals you made, it wasn't coincidence, and someone close to her helped cover it up. The words detonated in Emily's mind. Her mother's death had always been a blurred tragedy in her memory, framed as illness and heartbreak. Now the idea that it might have been engineered by someone in this very room set her heart pounding. Chloe let out a choked sob. Are you saying she was killed? Elise hesitated. I'm saying she was silenced, and the people who benefited most are still benefiting. Her eyes cut toward Victoria but didn't linger. Instead, they returned to Richard, whose silence was its own confession. Emily's insides twisted. Her father's jaw worked as if he were chewing on words too bitter to swallow. I made choices, he finally said, voice ragged. But I didn't kill her. I didn't know what they were capable of. I thought I could shield you by pretending everything was fine. His admission was almost worse than denial. Pretending had allowed abuse, lies, and maybe even death to fester in the shadows. Victoria's face was ghostly pale. For once she had no retort. Emily's thoughts spiraled. Every memory of her mother now dripped with a new kind of grief. She had begged Richard to listen, left warnings no one heeded, and possibly died for it. Anger coiled inside Emily, not clean and sharp but messy, tangled with love for the man who stood there looking smaller than she'd ever seen him. The moral ground beneath her feet cracked again. How do you seek justice when justice might destroy what's left of your family? Elise placed a gentle hand on Emily's shoulder. You have more power than you think, she whispered. Your mother's fight doesn't have to end in silence. But if you speak, you need to be ready for the cost. The cost hung in the air like smoke, acrid and heavy. Outside, the distant wail of a siren underscored the gravity pressing in from all sides. Emily glanced at Chloe, whose tear-streaked face mirrored her own turmoil. Were they brave enough to pull apart every lie, even if it meant finding out someone they loved had blood on their hands? Or would they choose the fragile comfort of ignorance, letting the past rot quietly behind gilded gates? If you were in Emily's place, would you risk destroying your family to expose the truth, or protect what's left by keeping silent? And as Elise's words echoed like a summons, the sound of footsteps creaked upstairs. Footsteps that didn't belong to anyone they thought was in the house, drawing every eye toward the staircase. The creak of footsteps on the staircase froze everyone in place. Emily's breath caught as a figure emerged from the shadows above, and for a heartbeat she thought her grief-addled mind was conjuring ghosts. But it was Jorge, the gardener, his weathered face pale, his hands clutching a small wooden box. I wasn't going to say anything, he whispered, voice trembling. But if the truth is finally coming out, you need to know all of it. He descended slowly, placing the box on the table next to the photographs and Elise's folder. Your mother gave this to me before she died. She said one day her girls might need it if no one else protected them. Richard's hand shook as Jorge lifted the lid. Inside were letters, dozens of them, written in their mother's elegant script, one for each birthday they'd missed without her. Emily's tears blurred the words as she pulled out the letter marked for her 22nd year. Her mother's voice leapt off the page. Warnings of danger, yes, but also love, fierce and unwavering. No matter what happens, you are my brave girl, it read. If the world fails you, be the one who does not fail yourself. Emily's sob broke the silence, Chloe crumbling into her arms. Years of pain and longing poured out of them, raw and unstoppable. In that moment, the house no longer felt like a prison, but a tomb that needed light to enter. Richard sank into a chair. His shoulders bowed under the weight of his failures. I should have fought harder, he admitted, voice cracking. I thought building walls would keep you safe, but I locked you inside with everything I should have faced. His confession was not an absolution, but it was the closest thing to truth he had ever given them. Victoria, silent until now, reached for one of the letters with trembling fingers. For the first time, her icy facade melted. Tears streaked down her face as she read the words meant for a daughter she never was. "She saw me," Victoria murmured, shaking. "She wrote about how she hoped I would choose love over fear. And I didn't. I failed all of you." Her shame was heavy, but in her eyes there was something unfamiliar. Regret that wasn't performative, grief that wasn't selfish. Emily looked between her father and the woman who had made her life hell, and for the first time she understood something deeper. The world wasn't made of villains and saviors, just flawed humans making choices, some out of love, some out of fear, and sometimes both. "What happens now?" Chloe asked, her voice barely audible. Elise answered softly, "That's for you to decide. Justice doesn't always mean courtrooms. Sometimes it means breaking the cycle and choosing a different future." The girls spent the night reading every letter, each one a thread stitching their mother's love back into their fractured hearts. By dawn, the first rays of sunlight spilled into the mansion, warming its cold marble floors. The house felt different, still haunted by secrets, but no longer ruled by them. Richard called the authorities later that week to cooperate with an investigation into his company, finally facing the corruption he had ignored. It was messy and public, but for the first time in years, Emily felt proud of him. Victoria left quietly with nothing but her own letter, disappearing from their lives. Whether she would ever find redemption was unknown, but Emily wished her peace all the same. Emily and Chloe returned to school, slowly reclaiming their dreams. Healing was not instant nor easy, but with each letter from their mother, with each honest conversation, they found pieces of themselves they thought had been lost forever. On the anniversary of their mother's death, they stood together on the cliffs of Malibu, scattering wildflowers into the wind. The ocean roared below, a hymn for all they had endured. Emily whispered into the salt air, "We survived, Mom. We're free." And for the first time, she believed it. The shadow of pain would always remain, but intertwined with it now was something stronger, hope. Hope that the past would not define them, hope that love could rise from ruins, hope that even in the darkest nights, there are letters waiting to be found, voices waiting to be heard, and hearts waiting to heal. How did this story make you feel, and what part stayed with you the most? Comment 100 if you loved this story. Which country are you watching from? Share this video with friends who need hope, and thank you for watching on Hope Stories.